Hello and welcome to this all-new episode of the Fairfax Sports Report. I'm your host, Monica Moore, and as always, we have a great episode for you tonight talking about all of the spring sports throughout the region. But before we get to all of that, we want to thank the folks that help make this program possible. First of all, our good friends at CCI Screen Printing for all of your screen printing needs at 703-978-0257. Also, don't forget that you can get copies of this program as well as all of the games we broadcast throughout the region at www.pressboxvideo.com. Special thanks to our spring sponsor, Triple Edge Lacrosse, for your endless summer of lacrosse. You can contact Triple Edge at 703-392-6177. Don't forget to check out our website at www.fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. We have all the latest news and notes throughout the region, as well as our Video Vault feature, where you can see segments that we've done from games throughout the region. And finally, don't forget to become a fan of the Fairfax Sports Network on our Facebook page. Well, before we get started, just one quick news and note from around the region. Congratulations to Tynita Butts from TC Williams. Of course, she's had an outstanding track career over there. She recently competed in the Penn Relays, and she won the long jump. She went into the event in second place for the finals, but on her final attempt, she jumped a 19:11. So congratulations to Tynita. Well, I'm delighted to be joined in the studio today by Laura O'Brien, the head coach of the McLean girls soccer team. Welcome, Coach.
Thank you, Monica.
Well, Coach, congratulations on your season so far. You guys are doing outstanding, and I know you had a big game against Marshall earlier this week. Every game in the Liberty District is tough, but what did you think your team did well against Marshall?
Well, we actually had a very rough first half. The score was 0-0 at halftime. So the second half, I basically explained to my players that, in this district and going into the region, no one's going to give you anything just because you're a ranked team and it's their senior night and they're fired up and looking for a win, and you don't need to be the team to give it to them right now. And so second half, they came out, and after the first 15 minutes, the second half really picked it up and played a much better game, played much better quick passes to each other, and we were able to finish 5 goals in about 25 minutes.
Now, of course, another big game that you guys had recently was the Langley game. I know the players get excited every year, and I saw that Alexis Longwell got the shutout, and she only had to make 1 save, so obviously your defense played really well. Can you talk a little bit about their effort?
Well, they did. I have 1 senior, a junior, and 2 freshmen that make up my defense this year. And they right away were able to click and learn to play off each other and make reads as to where they're going to go. They've created a unique situation for Alexis to not face as many shots as she did last year. But my midfielders and forwards also really kept the ball in their offensive half the majority of the game. So big credit to them too, to kind of not make it quite as challenging on my defense.
And you do have an experienced goalkeeper in Alexis Longwell. Can you talk a little bit about her style as a keeper and how you've seen her improve?
Well, she is a very calm, kind of heads-up goalkeeper, very consistent. I saw her play before I became the coach last year, and last year I thought she made leaps and bounds as far as improving and had really just tremendous saves with her head, with her feet, that you don't see a lot of goalkeepers do. She also has great hands. Like I said before, this year she hasn't been tested as much, but of course we know it's in her, and as we look forward into the tournaments, we know she's going to come up big for us.
Now, your team did suffer a loss to Woodson earlier this year. What did your team take away from that game that you think will help them as they go into the postseason?
All good teams need a loss or a tie. They need something on their record. So we knew that Woodson was going to be good. We knew that we didn't have the best game. We had some subs in the defense for the majority of that game. And, which is certainly not an excuse, but Woodson really came and took it to us hard. And we can't sit back and just, expect teams to think that we're good and not give us all they have every game. So, my kids, felt the defeat. They don't want to feel that way again. And, it energized them a little bit to come out and say, we really have to work hard to get through the back half of our year.
Now, one player that's obviously stood out for you is Andy Romnez. Can you talk a little bit about her and what makes her such a threat on offense?
Andy Romnez is a brilliant player. She has the unique ability to hold the ball and create lots of time and space for her teammates. And, her ability to possess the ball with 2-3 people around her, it just gives so much time for my players to get in the right runs and in the right place at the right time and set up third runs off the ball. And she just has, a plethora of talent. And, she's the core of our center. And lots of stuff goes through her and her, her driven balls and crosses and direct kicks they're wonderful. So she's a huge asset.
And then another of your players, also another basketball player, Katie Flynn. I know she's a big leader that you have. Can you talk a little bit about what she brings both in terms of leadership and then also on the field as a player?
Well, she's a 4-year member of the program, so she's been through the ups and downs with McLean High School soccer, and she is one that no matter what, she gives 110%, no matter who the opponent is. And this year, actually, she's seen herself in not every position, but every area of the field. She's played forward, she's played defense, and midfield. So that's huge to know that you can have a player that no matter where you put her, she's going to give it her all and really contribute. We've been able to get her into forward more this year than we did last year. Last year, we really had to hold her at the outside mid, and she loves to play forward. But in a crunch against Woodson, for the first half, we did have her, in defense. So she's just, she's a great spirit. She's a great leader and teammate, and really just picks up the freshmen and makes them feel welcome, and very key to the chemistry of my program.
And speaking of chemistry, I know that you have a lot of players who also play club soccer together, and I know that that's obviously a huge help on the one hand because they get all that extra experience playing together, but I don't know if you guys have had any of the problems with the players being away at some of their club events during the season.
They are. Fortunately, it's been one team or another as opposed to several of my teams. The team that contains 3 of my freshmen and 1 of my sophomores, if they ever had a tournament, that would, be 3, sometimes 4 starters gone, which would be huge. And, if Andy's team was ever away as well, that could be as many as 6 players. So, fortunately, they've been scheduled at different times, but we have had very few games where I've had my entire roster there.
Now, you guys started out the season with a huge win, the 15-0 win over Wakefield. How do you feel like that set the tone for the season and how that played into the success that you've had subsequently?
Well, I think the best part about that game was that everybody got involved. Nearly all my players scored, and the older kids were able to see right away that the younger kids are definitely going to contribute. It was also good as far as them, seeing the other side of things as far as a team like Wakefield, who, probably don't win as many games as lots of teams in this area. And, the sportsmanship was good, the positive attitude on both sides of the ball. And, I think it really was just, it was a fun win. It was a mature win. And, I think it was just a great way to kick off my team's chemistry.
Well, and you have a huge game coming up against Chantilly, who's one of the top teams in the region as well. What do you think your team has to do to beat Chantilly?
To beat Chantilly, we're definitely going to have to play the ball very, very quickly and utilize our midfields very well, but, the outside just as much as the center, even though I have Andy and Josie in the center. They have very strong center midfielders. So quick play, very aggressive play. And I'm sure it'll be, a battle and hopefully a really fun game to watch.
Well, and the last question, your team last year finished the postseason very strong, upsetting some teams, really got on a lot of people's radar. How do you think that experience that they got from last year is going to help build into their entry into the postseason this year?
I think it really built confidence for the program as a whole, as far as the kids being able to start believing that they are a good team. McLean does have a good program that can be successful. Beating Woodson in the semifinals last year at home because of rescheduled rain of that semifinal game. You just really saw it in their faces of kids who had been in the program for a long time, who hadn't gotten that far, finally start to believe in themselves and believe in each other. So that's carried through this year, and it's created a situation last year where they knew they had to count on the younger players. So this year, when we had even more younger players came in, they, really welcomed them and said, hey, you guys are going to contribute and we need you. So, let's make the best of the young ones and the old ones.
Well, Coach, thank you so much for joining us, and we wish you the best of luck against Chantilly.
Thank you very much.
Well, we are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll have more of our girls soccer report. Welcome back to the Fairfax Sports Report. Well, we just talked with Laura O'Brien, the head coach of the McLean girls soccer team, talked with her about her upcoming match against Chantilly. We recently got to see two of the Northern Region powerhouses, Chantilly and Robinson, square off, and we have some highlights from that game to show you, which was just a clash of the Titans in the region. There you see a huge corner kick there, batted around the Chantilly defense. Robinson in yellow, Chantilly in black. The goalkeepers both got a workout early on, but it was great efforts by Jan Kuska there, the Chantilly goalkeeper. There you see another corner, another great save by Jan Kuska. She came up huge for Chantilly. She was definitely a bright spot, but there was the big corner kick from Jensen Smith to Annie Hovland, her 6th goal of the season, put Robinson on the board first, giving the Rams the momentum. And really the Rams had the momentum for most of the game. They had the ball in their offensive half of the field for much of the early goings, and there you see an on goal there that was scored, giving Robinson the 2-0 lead during the first half, a lead that they wouldn't relinquish. And you have to give the Robinson defense a lot of credit because it was the first game where Chantilly had not scored. Robinson getting the shutout against a team that has almost everyone returning, but you have to give the Chargers a lot of credit because they've suffered a lot of injuries this year, several concussions. Of course, Katie Menzie with the bruised calf, and she had a valiant effort in the midfield. It was a great battle between Cortland Bristol and Katie Menzie for Chantilly and Barbara Plattenberg for Robinson and her teammate Brooke Curtis. There you see the final score. Robinson 2, Chantilly 0, the Hovland goal in the 16th minute, and then the on goal giving Robinson a little insurance. After the game, I got to talk with Jim Reich and Barbara Plattenberg about the big win over their district foe. Player of the game, Barbara Plattenberg, and head coach Jim Reich of the victorious Robinson Rams. Now, Barbara, this was a huge game. It was very hyped against a strong Chantilly team. How does it feel to come out the victors 2-0?
Oh, it feels great. I mean, we just wanted to come in here and pressure them and do the best we can, and it was great to come out with a win, especially against such great competitors, Chantilly, so it was awesome.
Now, you guys, of course, got on the scoreboard first, one quick goal. Was the momentum very important?
Yeah, without the momentum, we probably wouldn't have gotten our second goal, so it's very important to keep it going, and if we had lost our momentum, then they probably could have gotten a counterattack, so it was good we kept our momentum.
You were battling in the midfield against Katie Menzie, a bigger player. You get pushed around a little bit, but your speed is very impressive. What's your strategy when you're working through the midfield like that?
I mean, I try to look at the ball, not at her feet, just trying to do my best to get in and pressure her, don't let her by me, and then try and get a quick offensive burst of speed out so I can get forward as much as I can.
Now, Coach, one thing that really impressed me about your team tonight, they seemed to win a lot of the 50-50 balls. They were always very quick to the ball. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, that's one of the things we emphasized all week. We weren't real happy with the way we played against Deep Run. We thought that we weren't winning the 50-50s. And as far as our game preparation, what we talked about, we said this was imperative because if Chantilly started winning the 50-50s and got into the momentum, they were going to be much harder to beat.
I was very impressed with your defense tonight. Chantilly only got a couple of shots on goal. You have one of the best defensive lines back there with Monica and Allie. Can you talk a little bit about the defense?
You can't really say enough about those kids. They're a cohesive unit. They played together last year. We've got all three of those girls back, and they're solid players. What they possess that a lot of other defenders don't is they've got all three of them have great speed. Allie's got tremendous speed, and they can match up with the other team's forwards. And a lot of other schools don't have that gifted player that can keep up with the forward. And a lot of times the forwards will get behind them. These kids, if they get beat, they can run them down and recover quickly.
Well, Coach, no doubt that you're probably going to see this Chantilly team again, but what were the things tonight you were most pleased with about your team's effort?
As you mentioned, the 50-50 balls. I mean, we had talked, we kind of laughed. The article in the Post where Coach Bibby was interviewed said we have to control the midfield and pressure the defense, and that's what we had been talking about all week. To be frank, we're very close in terms of mirror images of each other. We both have talented kids in the midfield. We have, good attacking players, and we felt the key there was controlling the ball, winning the 50-50s, getting down and pressuring them. First goal, and we do just like Chantilly. Both teams are very dangerous on their restarts and set pieces, and when we pride ourselves on that, we spend a lot of time practicing that, and we got our first goal off the corner kick, and the second goal, and it obviously was unfortunate for the defender, but we had a kid on the back post waiting for it if it had gotten across. So those are the things, put pressure on and, don't let, and in the second half it was don't relax and don't let them come back. So.
Well, Coach Barbara, congratulations. A huge win tonight in the Concord District.
Thank you.
So a huge win for Robinson over Chantilly, and as I said during that interview, I do expect that those two teams will match up again before the season is over. Well, earlier we were joined by Laura O'Brien, whose team has been tearing through the Liberty District. Now I'm delighted to be joined on the phone by the head coach of the West Springfield team. Coach Alucanis, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Your team has been tearing through the Patriot District, and you had a big game against Hayfield. What did you think your team did well, and what do you think they could have improved on?
Well, against Hayfield, we got a positive result, but I'd say it was far from our best match of the year. The biggest positive that we took out of it was that we really did a complete 180 from the first half to the second half. In the first half, I thought we were pretty sloppy, and there were periods of the game where we let Hayfield take the game to us. And during those periods, we were losing the midfield, and when we do that, it puts far too much pressure on our backs. Something we really identified that we needed to do better was to win the midfield, win tackles, win balls in the air, which gave us an opportunity to play tighter in the back, turn the ball over less, because that's something we're going to have to do more as we get into district and regional playoffs.
Now, you started off the season with a tie and then a loss, and then you've rattled off 9 straight wins. How do you think those first 2 games helped you in order to go on this run that you've been going on?
In those first 2 games, we realized that we were playing effective soccer. Our real problem was that we weren't finishing. Almost every shot that we took in those 2 games, it was either off target, or if they were on target, it was at the goalkeeper or hit a post. It was a stage where we were forming as a team, we were bringing in new players, and we had some returning players who were playing in different spots from last year. Probably 2 of the biggest positives that we took out of it. Against Stonebridge, they actually scored on us very shortly into overtime. They were winning the game 2-1, and every girl on the field picked their head up. We pulled the ball out of their goal, and we went right down and scored to tie the game at 2 again. I think that showed a strong will, desire, and character within this team. The other thing that we took out of it as a huge positive was that we kept our heads up, and we walked off both of their fields knowing that we could play with either one of those teams and that they're 2 of the better teams around. We didn't play poorly in either game. We just didn't have luck on our side. So we walked off the field with our heads up, and we knew that we could turn a corner and we could start winning some games.
Well, and you've not only been winning these last 9 games, but they've been shutouts, which is very hard, particularly in this region. Can you talk a little bit about your defensive unit and how they've been playing so well together?
Our back four is made up of Lauren Sipple, who is our center back, Maggie McGavin and Danielle O'Brien, who play the outside, and Paige Babel sits in at stopper. And their real strength is that they truly play as a unit. They defend as if they're one. They communicate with each other. They slide, they cover, they pressure, and they basically do everything as one. One of the reasons I think that happens is because they are all returning players and they've played together in the past before. So when one makes a mistake, another one covers for her. If one player falls down, another one picks her up. And they really take as much pride in defending. They take as much pride in having a shutout as other players do in scoring a goal. The other big benefit we have down there is we have very strong players coming off the bench who can step in and they give us quality minutes with no drop-off. and everyone on the team gets into our defensive effort.
Well, and also speaking of your defensive effort, I certainly want to give you a chance to talk about your goalkeeper, Beth Ann Nowak. I mean, it's a tough position always playing the goalkeeper. Can you talk about what makes her so effective as a goalkeeper?
Beth Ann is, as a goalkeeper, immensely talented, and she's also a great leader, and she's incredibly positive. I've known Beth Ann for 3 years now, even though it's my first year coaching the team. I've known her for 3 years, and I don't think I've ever heard her say a negative word to anybody in any situation, which is extremely commendable on her part. She's extremely quick off of her line. She commands her goal box, and she's a great shot stopper. She also sees the field incredibly well, which helps our back four get organized, and even back through organizing into our midfield. She's positive, she's assertive, and she's a very calming force for us in the back of our lineup.
Well, we've been talking a lot about your defense, but your offense has been outstanding as well. I think outscoring opponents so far 30-4. Can you talk a little bit about their work together also as a unit?
We have playmakers all over the field. When you look at our statistics, Amalia Clayton and Jesse Gonzalez have scored the majority of our goals, but we've also gotten big contributions from our other strikers, from our other central midfielders and outside midfielders, reserve players, and we've even gotten some goals from our backs. Everybody understands the offensive philosophy that we're looking for. Therefore, we can rotate players into positions, and we get similar results. The team's very unselfish, and one of the things that helps spread the goals around is that we have playing time that we can get other players in, so most of the team gets opportunities to score goals. And it's been helping us because we don't have to use players for 70 minutes or more every match.
Well, one game that was very impressive, South County is an outstanding team, and I know that they were missing their starting goalkeeper, but you won 8-0. So what do you think were the other things that your team did well? I mean, I know anytime there's an injury and a team doesn't have the personnel that they're used to, that does shake things up a little bit, but that was a huge win in the Patriot District.
I think we did pretty much everything well in that game. We said ahead of time we wanted to score early, which we did. I think it was about 25 seconds into the game that we scored, and then we added a second goal before we were in 10 minutes into the game. We were able to identify their key players on the field, and we were able to mark up on them and recognize where they would be dangerous, which one of the things that they did was they moved those players around. So it was a bit of work to track them and identify where they were and make sure we didn't forget about them. I felt that we were strong at every position in the midfield. Our backs played their typical don't allow anything game, and it was really a consummate team effort. The team played as one, and that was, I would say, far and away the best game that we've played all season.
Well, and after that game was over, I read a quote where Julia Stedgel said that she thought one reason why your team played so well is because they practiced so hard. Can you talk a little bit about your philosophy about practices and the types of things that you guys do that have certainly been contributing to this 9-0 run that you've been going on?
Myself and Brad Fawcett, who's my assistant coach, we try to break everything down to a point where it's small and simple so that the larger scale concepts can be better understood and seen on a smaller scale. We also take plenty of time individually with players, and we help them replay, understand their roles, which I know before the South County game was something that helped Julia in particular. Another key to our practice, in my opinion, and it's as I was coming up through high school and when I was playing in college, I felt was very important, is we try to make everything competitive. Every drill, every game has a winner and has a loser, and we expect the players to know what the score is. And there's consequences for the losing team, so they don't want to lose. So whenever we get in situations, they don't have to turn it on and turn it off for a game. They know it's time for soccer, I want to win, or else there's going to be negative consequences to it. And I think that's really helped our team develop a solid team character.
Well, of course, your next game is a game against Woodson. They're at the top of the Liberty District. Of course, you guys are at the top of the Patriot District. What are the big things that your team is going to have to do well to win that game?
Oh, Wood, very good team. They've got some quality wins this season, and they've gotten those wins against good teams, and we have to offer us a stern test. And we're really going to need for every player to step up to play together and to unite as one for this game. The defense has to be as they always are. We need to win individual battles in the midfield, and we have to take advantage of our opportunities, as we know that we're not going to get a whole ton of opportunities to score goals. So when they're there, it's something that we have to take advantage of. I think it's going to be a very good game for us. I think it's going to be a very good game for them also.
Well, Coach, thank you so much for joining us. We wish you the best of luck in that game.
All right. Thank you very much.
So there you have it. We've talked to the coaches of two of the top teams in the region. Now we're going to show you our Fairfax Sports Report soccer ranking so you can see where they fall this week. Robinson's still on top with that 8-0-1 record, and of course their schedule is so tough that record means even more than that with what the teams that they've been playing. They just defeated a very strong Oakton club that had only prior lost to Chantilly. Of course, that Oakton club led by Caroline Coyer, and an outstanding team, but Robinson coming out with the win. Woodson still in the number 2 spot. As I said, they will be squaring off against that very strong West Springfield team. They're having a very good year. They ran into, of course, Robinson early on and got that big tie, which gave them a lot of confidence. And there you see Melissa Bibby's Chantilly team. They're 8-0-1. That one loss was the Robinson game. Since then, they've rebounded very nicely with huge wins over Oakton and Westfield. McLean and Centerville still tied in the 4th place spot. Of course, that is Laura O'Brien's McLean Highlander team. And then Centerville faltering just a little bit. They lost to Oakton on Monday. Again, such a great Oakton team. I haven't talked a lot about them this year so far, but they are certainly on my radar. They could definitely make some noise in the Concord district. And there finally that West Springfield team, as I said, went on that tear after they had a tie and a loss to start the season, and now they are actually at 9-1-1 after the win over Hayfield last night. Well, that's it for the girls soccer report this week. When we come back, I'm going to be joined in the studio by Dennis Stewart for the Triple Edge Lacrosse report. Welcome back to the Fairfax Sports Report. Well, I am delighted now to be joined in the studio by Dennis Stewart, as I'm joined every week for the Triple Edge Lacrosse Report. Welcome, Dennis.
Excited to be back, getting ready for district action.
Well, lots of great lacrosse games going on this week, and it seems like with the girls in particular, some of these scores that we're seeing are still phenomenal.
There are definitely some teams that are starting to peak. Some are starting to limp a little bit into the tournament, but tournament time is going to be very exciting.
Well, let's take a look at the Triple Edge girls lacrosse standings so you can see where the girls are ranked this year. Of course, this is the list you put together, Dennis.
Right, top spot, Michelle Gates and the Chantilly Chargers. They've got the number 1 seed in the Concord district wrapped up. That brings a bye. They're 13-0 now. That team is rolling along. And the number 2 spot, Robinson. They've got the big-time recruits. They've got 3 losses. They've lost to Chantilly and to Private Powers, Bishop Ireton, and Georgetown Visitation. Number 3 spot, Woodson, ended up with the number 1 seed in the Liberty District, defeating Langley last Friday night, 15-14. Megan O'Leary in her first year there, really having a great year. A team that really intrigues me a little bit now is the number 4 Madison team. That team has not lost in April. Their last game they lost was to Woodson in March. This team is red hot. They've got the number 2 seed in the Liberty. They've won 4 they've won 4 straight. They're just rolling along. They've won it by 76-24 in their last 4 games. Another team that I think is scary is the Westfield team. This team has 3 losses. They've lost to the number 1, the number 2, and the number 4 teams in the top 10. They have 1-goal losses against Chantilly and Robinson, and they've got a win over last year's state finalist Albemarle High School. This team could be scary and make a run at it. Number 6, Langley sort of limping into the tournament. They've lost four games in a row to top 10 teams. They're going to be the number 3 seed in the Liberty District. Stonebridge and Coach Kristen Howard, that's a team that is definitely going to look to be the spoiler in that district, and they definitely have the potential to be able to do that. Oakton at 8, that's a team that starts their season in May. They kind of, that's what they get ready for the tournament. They make their run to the tournament. That's what they did last year on their way to the state championship. Annandale, lots of consistent play there. Number 1 seed for Cindy Hook in the Patriot District. And number 10, T.C. Williams, edging their way in there. A couple of big wins. Looked like they were going to have the number 1 seed locked up. Then they got upset by the Hayfield Hawks. They're going to be the number 2 seed, and they're really playing well right now.
Well, and we've talked about it before on this program, Dennis, but the Patriot District, there's a lot of parity. TC beats Annandale by a goal. I think they beat West Springfield or South County by a goal. Then they lose to Hayfield by a goal. So anything can happen in that tournament.
A lot of one-goal games in that district, and don't count out the Spartans, because West Springfield's sitting right behind some of those teams, ready to strike back.
And then the other point you made I thought was very important. We've also talked on this show about how Chantilly appears to be running away with things a little bit, but Westfield plays them to an 18-17 game. Brittany Greil has 11 points in that game, 7 goals, 4 assists. But Westfield, it's always hard to lose, but to only lose by a goal to a team like Chantilly shows you that you're doing something right.
Robinson and Chantilly have dominated the field, except against Westfield. And those matchups in the tournament could be very exciting.
They have 2 great players, Amanda O'Sullivan over there, who I know Jim Dwyer has talked so much about. She's an outstanding player who doesn't get as much attention, I think, as some of the players from Chantilly and Robinson because of all the personnel around them. And then Hannah Scahn, who's also very important, Mary Barondess, lots of great Westfield personnel, a little overshadowed by some of the other teams.
That all-district meeting could be a real headbanger in there between with that many good teams and that many good players. It's very tough to make sure everybody gets the recognition they deserve.
Well, every week it's hard to pick out the games of the week because it seems like there have been so many good ones. But we've got a couple here that we want to highlight for you to show you some of the scores that have been going out throughout the region. And first of all, this one, very impressive. Yorktown 10-0 over Stuart. They clinched their 3rd straight National District regular season title.
Coach Grunberger runs a very good program over there. Again, that they kind of don't get the attention that they deserve being over in that district, but they've done a very nice job.
Well, and 2 players for them that have been outstanding, of course, Hope Barazzato and Katie Hinsdale. Together, they've combined for 52 goals in 9 games. A lot of people very familiar with Hope Barazzato throughout the region. She was the district field hockey player of the year, and she's been very impressive on the lacrosse field as well. They had some huge victories, of course, a very disappointing loss to Madison, I think 23-7, but a great year so far for Yorktown.
And it's going to be interesting because the National and the Patriot matchup, so they'll cruise into it. They could have a pretty good chance of getting into one of the top teams against Concord or Liberty in the 2nd round of regionals.
Well, a couple more scores that we want to show you from throughout the region. Lots of big games, and this was the big Annandale TC Williams game we talked about a little bit earlier. TC Williams getting the 1-goal win over the Adams.
Playing very well, and that team has started to peak. Again, a little bit of drop off in that Hayfield game, but I think they're definitely going to say something about who wins that Patriot District tournament.
And then one final game of the week to show you there, this Langley-Woodson game. Dennis, I mean, you put it about right. Langley has limped a little bit, losing their last 4. But when you look at the teams that they've played, some pretty impressive.
Right. Again, it's not Sisters of the Poor they're losing to. Those are definitely good teams that they're playing against. And they're pretty close games. They definitely have an opportunity to turn it around here in the district tournament.
Well, there's kind of been a theme tonight of talking about some of the teams that aren't necessarily in the rankings each week, but have some very impressive players that don't necessarily get as much of the limelight as some of the teams that you see at the top of the rankings every week. So Dennis has picked out a couple of players who've been under the radar, but certainly deserving of some attention.
Jenny Diana over at Lee High School recommended Christina Chow. She's got 11 goals, leads her team. She's got 33 ground balls. More impressive than that, this is a young lady who comes to lacrosse practice every day and then goes to track practice every day. She's on the lead track team. She runs the 400, she runs the 200, the 4x400, and the 4x100. Obviously, she's got pretty good speed.
And a couple of more players we want to highlight to you, lots throughout the region, but South Lakes also has a very impressive senior in Tess Diatley.
Tess leads her team with ground balls. She's got 51 ground balls. She leads her team in goals with 10. She leads her team in caused turnovers with 8, and she's got 26 draw controls. That's a player that's doing a lot of things on the field.
Lots of great competition in the Liberty District that she's squaring off against every single night. continuing on with our players who've been a little under the radar, another South Lakes player, sophomore Abby Reed.
Abby, again, we talk about families. Abby's older brother, Ed, is an All-American candidate. He's one of the best defensemen in the region. Abby is talked about very much in the same way. She can control a game on defense. She matches up against the best players, and she just can control the game. She's second on the team with 22 ground balls, and she's a young sophomore.
And then finally on the list, a player from McLean. We talked about her sister, the goalkeeper for the soccer team earlier in the program. Hannah Longwell, very impressive as a goalkeeper for the lacrosse team.
Well, between going to watch the soccer goalie and the lacrosse goalie every night of the week, the Longwells are staying very busy. Hannah's a very impressive young lady. She started playing youth league lacrosse with the McLean youth group. She's got a 69% save percentage on 238 shots. This young lady won the Angus Award at McLean that generally goes to seniors after they've won 8 letters. She had won 8 letters after her sophomore year, and
wow.
She's projected to win 13 letters. Pretty impressive.
So there are just a couple of the girls lacrosse players throughout the region who we don't talk as much about every single week, but are having very dynamic years. And I imagine that when these district meetings start happening, there are going to be names that will be discussed quite a bit.
No question about that.
Well, we are going to segue now into the boys lacrosse segment, and we are joined on the phone by Rich Hodge, the head coach of the Madison boys lacrosse team. Coach, can you hear us?
I can hear you great.
Coach Hodge, great to have you on tonight.
Hey, what's going on, big time?
Big win last night. Want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that was a big win for us. Well, it had been a long time since we had we'd beaten Langley, so the kids were pretty fired up about it. It was, I think I've watched the tape maybe like 3 or 4 times today. Just a really hard-fought game by both teams. We had a lot of lucky bounces go our way. I think the kids were really fired up to play Langley, and it was a real weird game too because the rain delay from last week. But a very, very exciting game, probably one of the most special I've ever been a part of. So
that Lightning game with a 5-day delay could have been the longest game on record.
Definitely.
Coach, talk to me a little bit about your offensive group. We know a lot of those names, household names: Sobalski, Hayden. Who else is really getting the job done up front for you?
Well, we've had some guys really step up lately. Matt Rusiello, who's a senior. I think he's going to Tech to play club there. He had an amazing game last night. He's number 7. He was fighting for a ton of ground balls and just selling out, trying to retain possession. Gordon Bailey, he's been stepping up, big time in the last couple of weeks. Huge game against McLean a couple of weeks ago. And he's been awesome. With Hayden and Sobalski, everybody kind of knows, all right, these are going to be the 2 guys. But Gordon's just been finishing at the cage. The kid's he's the one that scored the tying goal. Mike McCool, one of our midfielders, has been stepping up in a big way, in the transition game. And Tommy Sampson is a kid a lot of folks know about. He's been having some great games too. So, and we've been getting production out of some of our juniors too. So it's been nice to see, Kyle Headley, John Gross, Nate Oster step up. They know they're not going to get a lot of minutes, but they're still chipping away. So it's a good group. I have a lot of fun coaching them.
Gordon Bailey's playing so well. I think you were trying to keep him a secret, and he's tough to keep a secret right now.
Yeah, I really don't know how you defend those 3 guys. Because, you start locking off Sobalski, and then you put your second best defender on Mike Hayden, and then, all of a sudden they just start feeding the ball to Gordon because they're so selfless. Those 3 guys, they don't care who gets the ball. They just want to move it around to see who's open, and then, when they get their opportunities, they take them.
Speaking of defense, Nick Vonsa is quite a player for you.
Absolutely.
Why don't you talk about him and the rest of the players in the back?
Yeah, our defense, coming into the year, a lot of people were kind of talking down. Our goalie, Ryan Cass, is, I think one of the better goalies in the district. Obviously, Cooney and I think it's Colangelo over at Woodson get a lot of hype. But, he's just a great kid, and he's been a rock for us. He's just steady. Last night he saved a ton of shots. And, Nick Bonish is one of our seniors, 0-0. The kid's just all heart. He was just all over the place last night. And he's very steady. He's like that all the time. Whenever we we put him on their best attackman, and usually he's really able to get the job done. You know, Charlie Pence, the number 11, he's a junior. He's made a lot of big plays, and Max Dale, the other senior. I mean, last night, you know, his transition clear, I mean, to Mike Hayden, I mean, that really sealed the game. I mean, you know, just cool, you know, cool as the other side of the pillow. I mean, you know, the kid just grabbed the ball, wheeled it up, tossed it to Hayden, and Hayden put it in, so.
Now, Coach, last night's game set up a three-way tie at the top of the district, and
Definitely.
you end up winning the coin toss. Any opinion on and I'm sorry, Langley ends up winning the coin toss to get the number 1 seed. Any opinion on it coming down to a coin toss as opposed to some kind of statistical thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's frustrating, but, you know, you got to win the games. You know, we had to win that Woodson game, you know, to get the title outright, and we didn't, you know, to get that number 1 seed. I mean, we did the same thing last year. Same thing happened. You know, I'd love for them to come up with a little bit better formula, but at the end of the day, I mean, you got to win those games. You know, I mean, our district is always tough. I don't care, you know, what year it is or who the kids. You know, it's just the last year. I mean, you know, the same thing happened. You know, you just got to win the games. You know, you're supposed to.
And the Saxons came out of that number 3 slot to win it last year.
Absolutely.
So I guess you're rooting for the same thing this year.
I'd love that. Absolutely. Hopefully, the boys will get a little bit motivated about it. You know, I guess there's a little bit of a perceived, that sucks. But at the end of the day, you know, hopefully they'll get motivated. You know, we got to take on a real tough, you know, South Lakes team who went 10-8 with us. You know, Matt Blamey is a great coach. You know, so we're really preparing for these guys on Friday, and hopefully we can. Hopefully that'll set up a nice rematch with Woodson.
And Coach, you've talked a lot about that Woodson game. What were the things that your players took away from that game, and what were the things you thought you could have improved upon that you'll be building on into the postseason?
And my initial reaction after the game, you know, Fitz is a great coach. I mean, they got a lot of offensive firepower. Their defense is outstanding. We have a lot of young kids. I think in the first half, our kids they're real nervous. You know, as a coach, I maybe overcoached them a little bit. I had the game hyped up, you know. And I think I made a lot of them real nervous about the game. And initially we came out, you know, had a lot of problems clearing the ball. We threw a lot of passes away out of bounds. You know, they were playing a little bit not like themselves. So, you know, we go into the second half, we were down by, I think it was like 7 or 8 goals. And, you know, everybody was kind of like in shock because that was the first time all season we'd really been down. You know, and I just basically said, hey guys, you know, we're going to have to do this again, you know, come districts. You need to get fired up and come out here and play these guys. And I did feel like we won the second half of that Woodson game, you know, but unfortunately, you know, we'd spotted them almost a touchdown in the first half. So,
Coach, I know that you and your staff are pretty tight-knit. Why don't you talk a little bit about your assistant coaches?
Yeah, we've got some of the best assistants in the region. Mike Ferdinger is our defensive coordinator. He played at Limestone, Madison graduate. Joe Alonji is our goalie coach. He played at Madison. He played at St. John Fisher up there in, I believe it's Rochester. Colin Swink, Madison graduate. I think he played for a little bit at Mary Wash. And we've got Ryan Hutchinson as well, who's a Madison graduate. We're a big Madison family. You know, we've all played there. We have a lot of love for Madison Lacrosse and, you know, the traditions that we have there. So, you know, we're a tight-knit group. You know, those guys are awesome. I mean, they're teaching the kids a ton. The kids are, every day at practice, those guys get them fired up, and they go to work. And, you know, I mean, those guys are great assistant coaches. I don't think we'd be where we are without those guys.
Well, we just talked about it, the battles that might be fought off the field in the all-district and all-region meetings. Is going to be your first lap around that track. You ready for that?
I don't know. This is my first year going in, you know, hearing all the war stories about these. I'm a little bit nervous, but I'm sure it'll be great. I'm sure it'll be a lot of fun to go in there and sit down and talk turkey with, you know, Earl and Fitz and Blamey and those guys. It'll be a lot of fun.
Well, Coach, thank you so much for joining us. We wish you the best of luck in the postseason.
Absolutely.
Good luck, Coach Hodge.
Thanks, guys.
Great having you here.
Great show. Thanks, guys.
Well, so, of course, that was a huge win and shook some things up a little bit in the Liberty District.
Definitely, and it's so odd that you know, the first time they went out to play, they played a little bit, and 2-2 tie, get a lightning delay, And, with the way the weather's been, they couldn't find a date. They end up coming back the next week to finish it up. So tough concentration, but also maybe both coaches had a chance to make a couple of adjustments in what they were doing as well.
That's a good point. Well, so I can imagine that the Triple Edge boys lacrosse rankings might be shaken up a little bit next week, but let's take a look at what they stood at the beginning of this week.
It's as close as it's ever going to be. Langley had 9 first-place votes, and Chantilly had 8. And, now Langley with the loss last night, they won the coin toss this year. They lost the coin toss last year for the 3-way tie at the top. Chantilly has the number 1 seed locked down in the Concord. They've got a bye in that 17 district. Woodson in number 2 in the 3-way tie there. They're getting ready. They're big time action for them. The number 4 team is pretty quiet. Robinson, number 2 seed in the Concord. Chase Walton doing a great job for them. Madison with that huge win last night. They'll come into the tournament with the number 3 seed. And look to shake the whole thing up. Herndon is in a tie with Oakton and Westfield. They end up being the number 4 seed in the district. Oakton is the same. They end up at number 5, so Oakton and Herndon will play each other in the first round. West Springfield, number 8. I owe them an apology. I missed them last week, and I heard about it. They've got Eric Schauder and Hayden Angelo, Corey McCrae doing a great job on the offensive side. Andy Shooter McGregor in the goal, Sean Phelan and A.J. White on defense. That's a very talented team. They're going to be the number 1 seed in the Patriot District. Annandale, again, just like I said about their girls team, this is a steady, high-quality team going into the tournament with the number 2 seed. And at 10, Westfield, again, they end up winning the coin toss. They're the number 3 seed in the Concord. Woody Angle, Charlie Ornbrigger on defense doing a great job for them.
Well, just like with the girls, we have some games of the week to talk about, and a couple first we don't have graphics for, but one already this week, which was a bit of a shocker, was Stonebridge versus Herndon. Now, of course, as you pointed out to me, it's not a district game, and so it doesn't necessarily help Stonebridge in terms of the district seating, but in terms of confidence, that's a big win over Herndon.
It is a big win, and that's a good win for them. But really at this point, they've played enough big games. They probably, if there were regional PowerPoints, I'd schedule that game too. But they're still going to go into their districts the same way. And they're maybe they're serving. Maybe they don't want to scare everybody in that district to serve notice that they're coming in. But then again, always better to win than lose.
And another one that I wanted to talk about, we talked about the girls matchup, the Westfield-Chantilly matchup, which I felt like was such a heartbreaker for Westfield. They were up 5-1 at the half. Chantilly did what Chantilly does. They came back full force. They got the win. But Westfield, a very good team. You see them kind of there near the bottom of the rankings, but it's just like the Westfield girls. It doesn't really indicate how good they are.
Right. That's going to be a team to be reckoned with. And plus, they got a very favorable draw by getting that number 3 seed.
So lots of teams to keep your eyes on as we move throughout these remaining games towards the postseason. But now a couple more games of the week that we do want to make a quick mention of. Now Woodson, of course, squaring off against Langley, a heartbreaker there for the Cavaliers. You see the goal scoring there at the bottom, lots of good diversity in the goal scoring, but Langley held on to that one, getting the 1-goal win.
I was lucky enough to be out there on Friday night. It was a great atmosphere for lacrosse. All the McLean youth kids were there. All the Great Falls youth kids were there for youth lacrosse night. Coach Fitzgerald, the magician on defense, playing a little bit of zone, playing a little bit of shut off, changing up the defense to keep the Saxons off balance. Langley opening up the game strong. Woodson was off their game a little bit. Tunick was excellent on attack for Woodson. Had a picture-perfect goal on a fast break. Had a great diagonal look to Mayberry on another fast break. You think of Langley as the fast break team, but Woodson did a pretty good job of taking advantage of it themselves. Alex Devlin with the game winner came underneath, drove from behind, came under a short stick defender. Slide was a little bit slow getting there. He put it there, and Woodson had one last chance. Took about a 10-yard shot. And Acuni made a great save on it, and that was the game.
When you've talked about Cooney, but another one, and Coach Hodge mentioned him as well, Stephen Colangelo with 11 saves during that game. He is one of the best in the district and the region.
Colangelo is a very good player, and he does a nice job clearing the ball as well.
Couple final games of the week to highlight to you. So many, again, it's so hard to pick, but Stonebridge, we talked about them coming on strong now during the end of the regular season. That's a very good South Lakes team that they beat.
Definitely, no question about it. Like as we talked about with South Lakes, Ed Reed, probably one of the best defenders in the region out there for the Seahawks.
And then finally one that may have surprised some, Falls Church with the loss to Washington Lee.
Definitely, no question about it. And Edison had a big upset in that district too. It puts Mount Vernon. It looked like it was me at 3. This game looked like it was going to make it a 3-way tie for first place. Then Edison gets a big win, pushes Mount Vernon into first place. So these district games are all 2-goal games, and as we talk about every time, a 2-goal game can shift back or forth either way as they get ready to play district play.
Well, just like we did for the girls, we have some under-the-radar players from the boys' teams to highlight to you. They don't necessarily make it in our rankings every week, but some of the best in the region on this list as well.
Brent Sikora at Centerville High School. He's got 10 goals, 15 assists, 61 ground balls. Very tough player, determined player. Grew up, his dad was a youth league coach in the Southwest Youth at Lacrosse, and also just a very outstanding student as well.
And then one more that we want to point out to you, a goalkeeper from the Concord District, Michael Carnahan from Fairfax, having some impressive numbers this year.
Every game Fairfax has played these very tough Concord District teams close. It's been all about Mike Carnahan and the Mike Carnahan show. He's allowing 7.27 goals a game. He's got 129 saves. Save percentage 68%, almost 70%. He's definitely keeping them in a lot of games.
And then one of my favorites on this list from Lee High School, Andrew Semp, has put up some impressive numbers. 2 games this season so far where he had 8 goals to his credit.
One coach asked me, how do you stop Andrew Semp? And I said, you don't stop Andrew Semp. He's an outstanding right-handed player. He manages to create space. He's a very good shooter. He's got 46 goals. He's got 3 assists. He's got 69 ground balls. He plays hard. He takes a lot of pride in his craft. His team may not have an undefeated record, but boy, does he play hard every night.
And his teammate, Killian Gallagher, also on defense, has been huge so far for the Lancers this year.
Killian is an outstanding young man. He's got 42 ground balls. He's a tough defender. He's aggressive off the ball. He's very aggressive on the ball. He's got a good package of checks. Definitely an under-the-radar player.
And not on our list, but I also do want to mention the league goalkeeper, Damian Poulos, as well, having a very good year. So Lee is a team that I would definitely classify as under the radar, but Dan DePiero doing an exceptional job with the Lee team. I heard that during the offseason, they only had about 6 players showing up, and now all of a sudden they've turned themselves into a very impressive team.
Dan does a very nice job, and his 2 assistant coaches are Coach Gallagher and Coach Senf, both Killian and Andrew's fathers, and they do a great job.
And then one final player we want to point out to you. He's a familiar name throughout the region, but Grayson Dahl.
This is a young man I didn't really know a lot about, and I started to make a couple calls, check up, and the other coaches in that district are so impressed with this young man. One coach on a very good team in that district said he might have been the best player on the field the night that they played. A little bit strange because he'll play long stick defense, and he's got a great bag of checks, take the ball away, and he also plays midfield. And he's got 15 goals at midfield. He's got close to 100 ground balls out there, and this is a guy leads his team in takeaways. And again, you know he's out there. You just can't hide from him.
Well, Dennis, as every week, thank you so much for all of your lacrosse knowledge, in particular for highlighting these players for us this week that don't get as much recognition, but definitely deserve some of the limelight.
Well, I'm very glad that we got a chance to do that. Thank you.
All right, well, before we go, next week we will have a segment on recent college signings. So if you know of an athlete throughout the region that has recently signed with a college, please email me at mmore@fairfaxsportsnetwork.com and we'll get them on the program. But before we go, again, we want to thank the folks that helped make this program possible, our good friends at CCI Screen Printing for all of your screen printing needs at 703-978-0257. Also, don't forget that you can get copies of this program and every game that we are at www.pressboxvideo.com. Thanks to our spring sponsor, Triple Edge Lacrosse. For your endless summer of lacrosse, you can contact Triple Edge at 703-392-6177. Our website is www.fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. You can go there for all the latest happenings from around the region, as well as our video vault feature for highlights and interviews from throughout the region. And finally, don't forget to become a fan of the Fairfax Sports Network on Facebook. Well, thanks so much for joining us this week. We'll be back next week with more news and notes from around the region.